Now we are going to discuss risk reducing surgery for women at high risk of epithelial ovarian cancers. That is the TOG article from 2014 and very important from exam point of view. This is visible on your screen?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. Now, as we briefly discussed previously about the risk factors, which are the women who are at high risk of epithelial ovarian cancer, we will discuss that and how to manage these. Now,
Mm.
coming to the introduction, we will briefly revise. Ovarian cancer is the second most common gynecological malignancy and most common cause of gynecological cancer death. Majority 90% of the tumors they arise from epithelial cells and the remainder are derived from the ovarian, other ovarian cell types, germ cells or sex called stromal tumors. Lifetime risk of ovarian cancer in general population is 1.4%. Median age at diagnosis is 57.1 years. Despite the good prognosis associated with early stage disease, overall 5-year survival is less than 45. Poor survival rate is largely due to the spread of the cancer beyond the ovary at the time of diagnosis in 75% of the patients. Now, coming about the details of risk factors, the strongest known risk factor is family history of the disease that is present in about 10 to 15% of the women with ovarian cancer. Now, women with single family member affected by epithelial ovarian cancer have 4 to 5% risk, while those who have two affected relatives have a 7% risk of developing the disease. We are talking about those people without having BRCA or Lynch mutations. These are just having family member one or two. So in those, if one family member is affected, then there is 4 to 5% risk, and if there are two family members, so there is 7% risk of developing the disease. In contrast, women with hereditary ovarian cancer syndrome, defined as having at least two first degree relatives with epithelial ovarian cancer, have a lifetime probability as high as 13 to 50% for developing ovarian cancers. Are you clear about this?
Yes.
Okay. Means two first degree relatives having epithelial ovarian cancer. These women are defined as women having hereditary ovarian cancer syndromes. We suspect that these might be having, and we screen them for having these mutations. These have 13 to 50% risk of developing the cancers. Now, coming to the BRCA gene mutations, women with BRCA gene mutations have greatly increased risk of ovarian and breast cancer. Estimated risk of ovarian cancer is 35 to 46% for BRCA1 mutation carriers and 13 to 23% for BRCA2 mutation carriers. And this is an exam question, that is why I marked them red, so that you can have visual memory of this. 35 to 46% for BRCA1 mutation and 13 to 23% for BRCA2 mutation carriers. This is the risk of ovarian cancer. BRCA mutations may account for up to 90% of ovarian cancers. Means in those patients who are having a hereditary ovarian cancer, in those 90% of the patients will have BRCA mutation. Otherwise, familial cancers account for 10 to 15% of overall ovarian cancers. Is it clear? So that you may not get confused if the exam question comes about the risk, the percentage of familial cancers in overall ovarian cancer patients, that is 10 to 15%, and among the hereditary cancer syndromes 90% are because of BRCA mutations. Tumors in BRCA carriers are more likely to be invasive serous adenocarcinomas when compared to non-BRCA age-matched controls and unlikely to be borderline or mucinous. This is also another exam question. Okay? Invasive serous adenocarcinomas. Now, What is the prognosis of BRCA gene mutations? The stage at presentation for ovarian cancer is similar for BRCA carriers and the general population. Approximately 70% of the patients present with stage 3 or 4 disease. Ovarian cancers in BRCA mutation carriers are more likely to be of higher grade than ovarian cancers in age-matched controls. However, BRCA mutation carriers, particularly BRCA2 carriers, have better prognosis than non-carriers. Okay, means ovarian cancers at presentation they are at higher grade in mutation carriers, but the prognosis is a bit better. Studies have shown that stage, grade, and histology adjusted 5-year survival and all case mortality was 45% in BRCA1 carrier versus 47% in non-carriers, and it was further reduced 36% in BRCA2 and 47% in general population. Is that clear? Or you people got confused about so much statistics?
Yes.
Okay. Don't get confused with these stats. You just need to know that BRCA carriers have better prognosis, but the disease is of high grade. The stage is the same for BRCA or non-BRCA carriers, but the grade is higher for the mutation carriers. You need to be clear about that. Now, coming to other high-risk genetic syndromes, Lynch syndrome, also called hereditary non-polyposis colorectal cancer, is associated with cancer diagnosis at an early age and the development of multiple cancer types, particularly colon and endometrial cancer. Women with Lynch syndrome have 3 to 14% lifetime risk of ovarian cancer. HNPCC carriers account for 1% of the ovarian cancers. Now, Peutz-Jeghers syndrome is associated with 20% risk of developing ovarian cancer, but many of these are non-epithelial sex cord stromal tumors. This mutation causes non-epithelial tumors, and the Lynch syndrome and the BRCA mutation they cause epithelial ovarian cancers. Now, the factors to decrease the risk we briefly discussed in our previous presentation. Risk of ovarian cancer appears to be decreased in women with history of pregnancy, use of oral contraceptive pills, breastfeeding, tubal ligation. It gives 34% reduction among BRCA1 carriers by 60% after adjustment for oral contraceptive use, parity, history of breast cancer, and ethnic group. Means in general population, 34% reduction in the risk of ovarian cancer after tubal ligation. In BRCA1 carriers, it reduces the risk by 60%. Hysterectomy, it confers 34% reduction. Both OCP use and tubal ligation, that was even more protective with 72% risk reduction. Now, telling about the detail of OCP use, a history of ever using the OCP is associated with a significant reduction in risk of developing ovarian cancer. Risk reduction 0.73. Large reduction in ovarian cancer risk occurred with increasing duration of OCP use. Risk reduction decreased by about 20% for each 5 years of use. By 15 years, the risk of ovarian cancer was halved. Importantly, the protective effect persisted for 30 years after cessation of OCP use, although the effect attenuated over time. For women with 5 years use of OCP, the risk reduction in ovarian cancer within 10 years of discontinuing OCP versus 20 to 29 years after discontinuing OCP was 29% and 15% respectively. Means a woman discontinued the OCPs after 10 years, the risk reduction was 29%, and after 20 to 29 years, there was still 15% reduction that was persisted. Now, talking about other risk factors, we already discussed ovulation induction and ovarian cancer don't indicate necessarily a causal effect. Infertility alone is independent risk factor. Nulliparous women have harbor high risk of ovarian cancer irrespective of their use of fertility drugs. Now coming about the screening of the ovarian cancer. Screening for ovarian cancer with CA125 or ultrasound is not recommended for premenopausal and postmenopausal women without a family history of ovarian cancer. Means in cervical cancer, we have population screening in every patient. For ovarian cancer, currently it is not recommended for women either premenopausal or postmenopausal who don't have a family history of ovarian cancer. Means one patient comes in our gynae OPD for any complaint, we don't need to screen her for ovarian cancer using CA125 or ultrasound because it doesn't improve the outcome and it is not cost effective. Now, women at increased risk, women with family history but dense of hereditary should be considered about their individual risk, considering age, parity, and history of oral contraceptive pills. About the limit for effectiveness of screening and about potential adverse, there is no evidence to support screening in this group, and decision regarding screening and risk reducing surgery should be based on individualized considerations involving the patient and the clinician. That will be a mutual decision. We need to clarify the patient that screening has limited role and she will be counseled about the individualized risk. Now, that was women at increased risk. Now, there are some women who have high risk family history. These are the women with a suspected hereditary ovarian cancer syndrome. They should be referred to a genetic counselor for consideration of testing for BRCA mutation or HNPCC if appropriate. That is also a question. If some patients tells you that she has suspected hereditary ovarian cancer syndrome, the next step is to refer her for genetic counseling. For women declining risk reducing surgery, some expert groups have recommended screening with transvaginal ultrasound plus CA125 assays every 6 months, starting at the age of 35 years or 5 to 10 years earlier than the earliest age of first diagnosis of ovarian cancer in the family. Means although we don't recommend screening, but in the patient who declines that she is not going to have a risk reducing surgery for whatever reason, we can offer her CA125 assay every 6 months, transvaginal ultrasound, and we will start screening her 10 years before when her relative was diagnosed to have the cancer. Okay, is it clear? Hello, guys.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, I thought you have slept. While this may be reasonable option, the evidence indicates limited effectiveness of screening in this population, and clinician and patients should not be falsely reassured by the negative screening results. Most groups advise risk reducing surgery for this group by age 35 or 40 or when childbearing is complete. So these are women with hereditary ovarian cancer syndromes. Because it is said that even if CA125 and ultrasound, these are normal, ovarian cancer can present 3 months after this normal result. So we should not be falsely reassured with negative results. Now, coming about chemo prevention, as combined oral contraceptive pills have been found to reduce the ovarian cancer risk in BRCA carriers, there has been concern that uh, uh, OCP use may increase the risk of breast cancer in mutation carriers. As we all know that BRCA carriers, they have risk of ovarian plus breast cancer. Studies have shown an increased risk of breast cancer with OCP formulations that were used before 1975. Now, with the recent OCPs, studies have not shown a significantly increased risk for breast cancer. or in the first 10 years after cessation of use of recent oral contraceptive formulations. Given the available data, it has been suggested that hereditary ovarian cancer who have not elected for risk reducing surgery and who are not trying to conceive should consider OCP use. Means they can get some benefit from this, but it is not a standard practice and alternative to risk reducing surgery. That is the definitive protocol for these high risk women, that we will go for this surgery at the age of 35 or 40, but who decline that or who are not trying to conceive, they can use OCPs. Now, what is risk reducing surgery? Because of lack of efficacy of ovarian cancer screening, uh, then it has prompted many clinicians to recommend risk reducing bilateral salpingo oophorectomy at the completion of childbearing rather than intensified screening for ovarian cancer. BSO in premenopausal women with BRCA mutation has additional benefit of significantly reducing the risk of breast cancer by 30 to 75%. Data regarding the finding of occult fallopian tube cancer in women who have undergone risk reducing BSO suggest that at least some apparent ovarian cancers were initiated in the tubes. The possibility that fallopian tubes are the primary site of carcinogenesis in ovarian cancer, it has led to some experts advocating salpingectomy at the time of hysterectomy in general population to reduce ovarian cancer risks. Means it is a standard procedure to perform bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy in patients with high risk of developing ovarian cancer. But in general population, when we perform hysterectomy for any other reason and we leave behind ovaries, then it is recommended that you remove the fallopian tubes as well. Now, removal of healthy ovaries does not add significantly to the operating time or immediate surgical complications of hysterectomy, but may have significant implication for short and long-term health. Means universally, when we remove the uterus, we can take out the fallopian tubes, but in the low risk women, healthy ovaries should not be removed because they have long term and short term health impacts. The postmenopausal ovaries, they are also physiologically active and continue to produce estradiol and testosterone. So, risk benefits ratio for oophorectomy at the time of hysterectomy, that can be difficult to estimate. So, this decision should be performed on individualized basis even in postmenopausal women as well. Now, discussing in further detail, the decision for oophorectomy must consider individual consequences for each woman with regard to her baseline risk for developing breast and ovarian cancers, coronary artery disease, osteoporosis, non-compliance, and poor clinical response to HRT. So we will consider all these factors while deciding about oophorectomy for a patient. In postmenopausal women, there is no consensus about whether ovaries should be removed or retained, and decision should be made following the patient consultation on individualized basis. It is important to remember that risk reducing BSO is not completely protective, and BRCA carriers will have a will have a risk of developing primary peritoneal cancer, approximately 2% risk. Means we have done the protective surgery, we will counsel the patient, there is still a 2% risk of developing a primary peritoneal cancer, so she should know about that. So what should be the age at which this surgery should be done? BRCA1 carriers, they develop cancers at an early age than BRCA2. So with BRCA1 mutation, these women, 54%, these are diagnosed before the age of 50 years. Diagnosis before the age of 40 is uncommon, that is only 2 to 3%, and under the age of 30, it is rare. Given that age of onset, it is usually over 40. It is appropriate to consider risk reducing BSO for BRCA1 carriers after the age of 35 once childbearing is completed. Okay, means at the age of 40, it is prudent to remove the ovaries and the tubes. But at the age of 35, if childbearing is complete, we can consider risk reducing BSO. BRCA2 carriers, they reach a 2 to 3% incidence a decade later by the age 50 years, and the average age at diagnosis is 60 years, similar to general population. So, based on this difference and the likely age of onset of ovarian cancers, BRCA2 carriers who want to conceive or they have some other issues, they can delay risk reducing surgery, but by doing so, they would not benefit from reduction in breast cancer afforded by salpingo oophorectomy. As we already have seen in previous slide, that self-injectomy and oophorectomy not only reduce the risk of ovarian cancer, they confer protection against breast cancer as well. So if BRCA2 carriers they want to delay their surgery, they should know that this surgery will not benefit in term of breast cancer risk reduction. Okay, is that clear? That is also very important exam question. If there is any ambiguity, you can ask, but you need to be very clear that BRCA1 early age of onset. So once after the age of 35, childbearing is complete, they need risk reducing surgery. BRCA2 carriers, as the average age is 50, so they can delay a bit, but at the cost of their loss about breast cancer risk protection. What are the fertility options for these patients? Because 35 and 40 quite a younger age. So women considering risk reduction BSO who have not completed childbearing should be counseled about alternative reproductive options including embryo cryopreservation, preservation of ovarian tissue that is still under investigation. Surrogacy is an option for those undergoing concurrent hysterectomy. Now, what is the pre-op evaluation for the women who are going to have risk reducing surgery? There is 4 to 8% chance of detecting an occult malignancy at the time of RRBSO. Over the age of 45, the risk rises to approximately 20%. Means if before 45 years of age she undergoes BSO, then still there is 4 to 8% chance of detecting occult malignancy. After the age of 45, the risk is 20%. So for these patients, pelvic ultrasound CA1 to 5 level are done to evaluate the presence of an ovarian malignancy. So that is mandatory because we should be prepared for this if we anticipate that an occult malignancy will be present. An intraoperative finding of malignancy necessitates full staging, and the patient should be appropriately counseled and consented about possible need for additional surgery. Because risk reducing surgery, a general gynecologist can also perform this. So, and the staging procedure that should be performed by the gynecological oncologist. So, we need to counsel the patient that if we find a malignancy at the time of operation, we will complete our surgery and she might need to be referred to tertiary care for further and additional surgery. The surgical procedure for what which is advised for the people with high risk of having ovarian cancer, it can be laparoscopic route or open approach, but laparoscopic route is preferable because it is associated with less morbidity. Minimum surgery required for risk reduction is bilateral salpingo oophorectomy. All ovarian tissue should be removed. If there are adhesions, then all ovarian adhesions should be removed in their entirety to ensure no residual ovarian cell remains. The ovarian artery and vein should be clamped at least 2 cm proximal to the ovary, preferably at the pelvic brim, to avoid leaving any ovarian tissue behind. Means we need to remove the ovaries to such an extent that ovarian artery and vein, they should also be clamped at least 2 cm proximal to the ovary, and preferably at the pelvic brim if surgical skill is available. The surgeon should remove as much as of the fallopian tube as possible, but corneal resection does not appear to be necessary. Although the intramural portion of the fallopian tube is typically left behind after BSO, there have been no reports of malignant transformation in the tubal remnants after this type of surgery. So we don't do the corneal resection and we don't need to remove the intramural portion of the tube. Now, how to decide about concurrent hysterectomy? Uh, Routinely, that is not indicated, but it may be performed at the same time as BSO when there are other gynecological indications. This increases associated morbidity and length of hospital stay. Now, risk reducing hysterectomy is beneficial in some group, for example, in women with Lynch syndrome who are at increased risk of having endometrial cancer. But in BRCA mutation carriers, hysterectomy is not recommended if there is no other indication. So in Lynch syndrome, endometrial cancer risk is 40 to 60%. So in those patients, we will remove the uterus at the time of this prophylactic surgery. Some BRCA carriers wish to take tamoxifen for chemoprophylaxis of breast cancer. Tamoxifen use is associated with an increased risk of endometrial pathology, and therefore these women may consider risk reducing hysterectomy at the time of BSO. Now, are you guys clear about the hysterectomy option for these patients?
Yeah.
And any other indication for hysterectomy in your
Yes, ma'am.
mind? Okay, can you add any other indication by using the common sense that this patient will require removal of the uterus as well? One is with the Lynch syndrome, other is those.
With
Sorry, mic is not clear.
with
Uh,
fibroid uterus and
Sorry, I can't.
with
The
many
patient with any
like
other uterine pathology like fibroid.
Yes, yes. We all, if there is any other pathology, we are going to remove the uterus. Anything else? Okay. What about those
any
people who
comorbidity, diabetes or hypertension.
no,
They
um,
might have increased just
no, because these
If the patient is
morbidities
also
don't.
increased risk of endometrial cancer, at increased risk of
Yes,
endometrial.
these are the risk factors for endometrial cancer, but they don't require hysterectomy at the time of this surgery. The people, you know that at this BSO that is performed at a younger age. So these people, they will need to use HRT. So if there are some people who are at increased risk of breast cancer, and they will have the this risk of developing breast cancer when they use progesterone preparation. So those patients, those need to get their uterus removed so that they can use unopposed estrogen. Okay. Women who wish to take unopposed estrogen therapy, they may consider concurrent hysterectomy, combined estrogen and progestin therapy for those who require HRT is associated with a significantly increased risk of breast cancer in postmenopausal women where no such association has been noted with unopposed estrogen in this group. Means unopposed estrogen that doesn't increase risk of breast cancer, but combined HRT that increases the risk. These women can also consider to have hysterectomy. The ability to generalize this data to premenopausal women who undergo risk reduction BSO is unclear. Now, what to do with this premature menopause? Women undergoing risk reducing BSO should be counseled about the effect of premature menopause and the available management options. These effects include like hot flushes, sleep disturbance, mood changes, hair and skin changes, sexual health related effects. They include dyspareunia, secondary to vaginal atrophy, decreased libido, and long-term health effects include osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, and effects on cognitive and psychological function. We need to address all these issues before counseling the woman about having the surgery. Now, we all know surgical menopause differs from natural menopause in that hormone level drops abruptly and hormone production ceases completely, as opposed to a gradual decline in the hormone level in natural menopause. Women who undergo risk reducing BSO are typically younger than the average age of menopause of 51 and are therefore exposed to detrimental effect of hypoestrogenism for longer. The sign guidelines on ovarian cancer, they recommend giving HRT after risk reducing BSO up to the age of year 50, and there is no decrease in the benefit in terms of breast cancer risk reduction. Means if we give HRT up to the age of 50 year in these younger women, so there will be no decrease in the benefit for breast cancer reduction. It will be further clear in the next slide. Although there is a small increase in the rate of breast cancer in women on HRT, they are usually of lower grade and HRT has no impact on breast cancer mortality. It is very important point. Small increase in breast cancer risk, but that is of low grade, and cancer mortality is not increased, so the risks are less and the benefit is more. So it is recommended to give HRT up to the age of 50. Now, what about HRT use in BRCA carriers? The type of BRCA mutation may impact on HRT breast cancer risk. Breast cancers in BRCA1 carriers are typically negative for estrogen and progesterone receptors and thus are potentially less likely to be influenced by the hormones than breast cancers that develop in BRCA2 carriers, which are usually positive for these receptors. So, shared decision making process regarding the management of menopausal symptoms and the effects should include discussion about non-hormonal options and the lack of population-specific data for the use of HRT in BRCA carriers after risk-reducing BSO. Factors that could possibly lower the potential increased risk of breast cancer with HRT use, they include limiting the duration of use until the age of 51, concurrent hysterectomy to enable the use of unopposed estrogen, and prophylactic mastectomy. We can discuss these options with BRCA1 and BRCA2 carriers. Am I clear so far? Hello guys,
Yes, ma'am.
are you with me? Okay, okay. Women who undergo BSO are at increased risk of osteoporosis and they should be counseled about osteoporosis prevention, treatment, and screening. Vaginal atrophy that can be treated with vaginal estrogen preparations. Low dose vaginal estrogen typically they don't raise the serum estrogen concentration above natural menopausal level and they don't increase the risk of breast cancer or increase the risk of endometrial cancer. So it is safe to give them vaginal estrogen preparations. Non-hormonal preparations can be used as first-line treatment, but if these prove inadequate, vaginal estrogen is a reasonable option. Now, this is the summary of our whole presentation. That is a table from the talk article. Briefly to summarize, risk of ovarian cancer and the suggested management. The increased women with increased risk, and there are women with high risk. Those with increased risk, they include positive family history, single member affected, not suggestive of hereditary ovarian cancer syndrome, risk of ovarian cancer 4 to 5%, and it is 1.7% in general population. So, what is the suggested management? No evidence to support screening in this group. Could consider risk reducing BSO based on individual consideration involving patient and clinician. These are the women at increased risk, and they can consider to have the prophylactic surgery, but it is not recommended. Now, the high risk women, family history suggestive of hereditary cancer syndrome, risk of ovarian cancer 13 to 50%. BRCA1 lifetime risk of ovarian cancer 35 to 46%, BRCA2 13 to 23%, Lynch syndrome 3 to 14%. Now, what is the suggested management? No evidence to support screening in this group as well. As we know, screening is not protective and it is not that specific. If we can offer screening to those who decline risk reducing surgery, but we need to counsel about its limitation, offer risk reducing surgery to these patients, offer risk reducing BSO after the age of 35 where childbearing is complete, offer risk reducing BSO after the age of 35, may delay means this is they are talking about after the age of 35, that is about BRCA1 carriers. BRCA2 carriers, in these people we also offer risk reducing BSO after the age of 35 but may be delayed until age 45 because of later age of onset in this group, but this would mean losing the benefit of the associated reduction in breast cancer risk. Lynch syndrome, offer risk reducing BSO with concurrent hysterectomy once family is complete because of risk of ovarian and endometrial cancer. Okay, this is the end of this talk article. Do you have any questions? Guys, any questions about this topic?
No.
Hello, guys. No
No,
questions?
ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Are you clear about this topic? Okay. Are you all the people? I will post questions relating to this topic tomorrow in the group. Okay. And I hope you can solve this. You find it useful?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. So I will post questions and I will then give you feedback. And also that will be a feedback for my lecture that how much you retain. Okay, guys. That is the
Thank you,
end
ma'am.
of our session. Okay.